So if you're in the market for a gaming phone and you want a very high refresh rate screen, but you want a great price, the latest Snapdragon 865, 8GB of RAM and UFS storage, then the Red Magic 5G that I have been using now for the last 2 weeks, I think is definitely worth a look. It's got a super competitive price, 579 euros here in Europe, gets you that spec. So in this detailed review, I'll be covering everything I can think of in detail. We'll take a good look at the cameras. A small disclaimer that this review is in exchange for this review unit that was sent out to me free of charge from Nubia, but all the opinions expressed in this review are 100% my own, and they do not have to approve this video before it is published.
First up, what do we get inside the box? So we have a quick start guide, SIM tray tool, USB cable to Type-C, and then our charger. So the included charger here is 18 watts. Now that will take 85 minutes to fully charge the phone. That is from 3%. However, it does support 55 watt charging. I've tested that out, and under 50 minutes, you can fully charge the phone if you happen to have a 55 watt charger. So looking at the design of this phone, the first thing you'll notice that when you pull it out of the box, that yes, it's a heavy phone. It's rather hefty, 220 grams. It is 9.9 millimeters thick, so not the thinnest out there. The camera does protrude a little here. You can see side on about 1 millimeter or so, bringing it up to then over 10 millimeters if you count that camera bulge. So we've got a Red Magic logo there on the back that will illuminate red. There are RGB settings here, so it's a little bit of gamer bling, but it is actually toned right down this year with this model. I do prefer this design, the back of it, compared to last year's. I think this one aesthetically just looks better, and it's a little bit more simplistic, but not really by much. You can see clearly the 5G there, their logo, and then powered by Nubia at the top. So our main camera here is a 64 megapixel Sony IMX686. We have an 8 megapixel ultra wide and a 2 megapixel camera for depth information. There is also a dual tone LED flash. On the left hand side, you'll find the Pogo port connector. We do have an exit vent for our fan. So there is one on either side. One takes the air in, the other expels it out. Similar a little bit to last year's model, having the same fan, but the intake on the side of it is different because it was on the back with last year's model. Now that switch here is to go into the Red Magic gaming mode where you can launch your games, boost performance. I will cover that in this review in depth. Right hand side, we've got two triggers here, so these can be customized. Now they're not hardware triggers, but just like the previous gen model, these are capacitive touch buttons with very good sensitivity. You can calibrate, customize them as well, all through the settings, which I will get onto later in the review. Exit vent there, we have volume up and down and power buttons made out of metal, and they do feel good. On the top, there's a secondary mic, antenna line, and yes, a 3.5mm headphone jack. Great to see this on a flagship. And then along the bottom, we've got a loudspeaker, so one of two. The earpiece doubles as a secondary loudspeaker. The Type-C port here doesn't support video out, unfortunately, which I think is a little bit of an error. Being a gaming phone, it would be great to output this to a large display. But hey, maybe that was cost reduction is why they didn't include it. The SIM tray slot, which takes 2 nano SIMs, so no micro SD card support. There is a rubber gasket around it as well, as you can see. And our earpiece at the top here, so a bit hard to make out the bezels, but we'll get onto the display just after this. The front-facing camera is 8 megapixels, the same as last year. Now there is a small little cutout with the pre-applied screen protector. That's where you'll find the ambient and proximity sensor. So the earpiece at the top, as mentioned, doubles as a secondary loudspeaker. There will be a sample in this video. So this panel that I've used is an AMOLED. It's completely flat, so there's no curvature to it, which is great, and no distractions. So you can see right now here, I've gone with this red image just to show you that there is no cutout, there's no notch. But yes, top and bottom bezels are large because of this. But it runs at 144 Hz, this AMOLED panel. Full HD plus resolution, and of course, that refresh rate means it is very quick, very fast. Now you're going to see some banding come through with my recording here. Trust me, in real life, you're not actually going to see that. Now the maximum brightness I've measured to be 460 nits of brightness approximately, and that is on the manual setting, which to me was disappointing. But if you put it on the auto setting, that will then top out to almost 700 nits of brightness, which is actually very good. Now, due to that banding that's just coming through on camera, it's hard to see the gamma here. So it's 2.2. Almost 2.2, 2.1, which is very good. Now, if we jump into the display settings right here, of Got dark mode, of course, which I'm currently using right now, and our screen refresh rate settings. So you can set it to the default 90, 144 Hz as well for games that support it, and you can run the UI and everything. There's a global refresh rate here that you can override it. And there's no smart mode, unfortunately, which would have been nice on this. It can also display the refresh rate in the status bar there, so you know what it is running at. And you've got the typical settings here too for our display preferences. So normal mode, colorful mode, natural mode, you can tweak the white balance, which is great having all of these options in a gaming phone. So this phone is running Android 10. It is Red Magic UI version 3. Now the theme of it out the box is very toned down. This is like stock Android 10. When you look at the icon set, no super gamer bling red and black ugly looking UI here, or the theme to it, which is really a good move. Now it doesn't come with any bloatware, nothing really, and the performance of it is excellent. So very responsive to touch as well, everything, even at 90 Hz now that I'm currently recording at. So we've got typical toggles in here. There's some useful ones that I do like. So obviously one here for the back RGB lighting. If you don't want it, just toggle it off. A good one to have is this, so 5G toggle. So I turn this off because I'm not in a 5G area. Why would I want the modem searching for 5G signal using up battery life? No, you can disable that. Screen recording as well for recording your games. You can do that through the gaming menu as well, the gaming system, which I will get onto just after showing you this. And that is all pretty much standard there. Now what is missing is a battery percent or battery settings menu is not in here, but apparently Red Magic told me that it's coming in a firmware update that will add that setting. So right now, if I wanted to see my battery percent, I can't. So I had to install a third-party app to see that, okay, I've got 80% at the moment with GSAM battery monitor, I can see that. Now I won't go into all of this right here because there's a lot of things to go through, but there's the lighting effects, okay? So there's a lot of things you can tweak in there. And I won't, as mentioned, go into all that because this video then will be like 30 minutes long, which is crazy. You don't want that. Cooling fan options. So you can turn it on here, but I just keep it with the gaming mode, and I'll get onto that later with that. And there's a lot of other bits and pieces. The gaming dock station, which I don't have, that's using those pogo port pins. And what about the fingerprint reader? So this one I had a couple of problems with actually. I needed to add my thumb 3 times to get it to now. So if I tap here, okay, I'm gonna do that again. Okay, it is pretty quick, but I had some issues with it in the beginning. I had to add my thumb 3 times to get it now to work as it's working now. Otherwise, it was very hit and miss. But now I find it's good. So that's a little tip there. Add your same fingerprint 3 times and it should work fine. So let's jump in here to have a look at just a few of those things performance-wise. So Geekbench 5. This is a very good score, very high, of course, with a Snapdragon 865, 8 gigabytes of RAM. And Antutu, okay, really good score. This is nearing 600,000. And not like MediaTek, they don't cheat Qualcomm, apparently. That's the genuine performance there. So 83% of the storage is free to us on first boot with a 128 gigabyte version. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to no bloat. I mean, okay, it's got Google bloat in here, but where's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? That's not pre-installed, which is absolutely perfect. I think this is really how it should be. Very lightweight there. You've got Notepad and a couple other few useful apps on there, and of course some Google stuff. So camera 2 API support is level 3. I think you can find a Gcam port for this. Certainly must be one out there that supports the Samsung GW1, the main sensor. Widevine level 3 cert, unfortunately. So if it had level 1, that would have been great, of course, for Netflix, Amazon Prime in full HD, but here we're stuck in standard definition. So it does support dual frequency GPS, and I found that, well, you get about 3 meters of accuracy normal, and this is like any other flagship there. That's pretty standard. What isn't really standard, well, it is kind of now, UFS 3 speeds, very quick, very, very quick there, but they're not the fastest I have seen. So random reads and writes there, good. The sequential write tends to be a little bit low, but that's not really that important. What is important is the reads there, and they are very fast. So that's not going to bottleneck this at all. So battery life here, this was running it at 90 Hertz. So we got 9 hours, 44 minutes with a fixed PC mark, 200 net calibrated screen. That isn't actually too bad, I believe. For a 4,500 mAh battery running at the faster refresh rate, you do take a hit there. And you can see I got 8 hours then of screen on time. Now wireless speeds and the range and reception, very good, as well as 4G reception, fine, no problems. That speed is about what other Snapdragon 865 flagships are getting, so very good. Now, what happens if you set the refresh rate then to force a global 144 Hz, not just gaming? Well, there we go. 7 hours and 30 minutes. Yeah, it's not wonderful now. We're getting into the kind of, there's that trade-off between such a high refresh rate and poor battery life. Now, if you're gaming at 144 Hz, it's going to be approximately 4 hours. If you game at 90 Hz, about 5 hours you're going to get out of this with the hardware, with the little fan inside as well. So when you flick this switch here for the gaming mode, you jump into this menu here, Red Magic, and I'll quickly go through our options we've got. So this is for the controller. If you happen to have that, you can buy an extra controller for it, but at the time of this review, it's not actually out at the moment. I don't think you can get it just yet. Then we've got these settings in here, so options for our fan, which you can also go through from the settings menu right here. So you can set it to the intelligent adjustment mode, which is by default, or maximum performance for rapid cooling, which you can leave on for the absolute best performance here. But I recommend just going with the intelligent. It adjusts the RPM according to the temperature there, I think is the best way to go. Recording settings for, well, Chinese only supported games for that one right there will automatically start to record your best moments. Network protection here is actually a good idea. So it stops it from swapping over to, for example, connect to another network. You don't want it doing that because that will then break up your gameplay and possibly throw you off the server. And basic options here too, but I won't go through all of those. So these games are automatically added, the ones that it detects. Otherwise, you can just add them yourself. Down the bottom, you can just turn the cooling fan on and off, some toggles for that. And let's just jump into a game. So I've already got PUBG here running in the background, okay? The aim assist that I have on is definitely giving me an advantage. Now this is crazy, silky smooth. Even though it's not 144 Hz, 144 frames per second, this particular game not supporting it at the moment, this version at least, it is really good. So those triggers, I have them configured. I'll just show you the pro trigger. So you just drag this to where you want it to be with the on-screen control and simply just go out of it, it saves it. So this one here is to look down the sights. I was already down it before, so tapping that. Very quick instead of pressing the buttons, and this to fire. So it is very fast. So when you find someone on the map that, okay, there's a guy right there, you can look down the sights, fire. It's just a bit faster, I find, than that. And then, of course, having an aiming assist right there is definitely aiding me. Now, I'm just going to tone the brightness down a little bit so we can see this right here, that the CPU at the moment, enhancement, I've just got it on GPU turbo mode. I've set that to super performance. That's really going to help everything just be a little bit smoother here. I'll just crank that brightness right up. I've got a filter over the screen so you're not seeing any of that flicker. So let's go over to another game. This one supports 144 Hz. It is Critical Ops. So this title here is quite a light engine that they use. Critical Ops it's called. It's like a Counter-Strike clone really. And it runs at 144 Hz. Super smooth when you look around, as you'd expect for this frame rate. And no problems, because this is really, as mentioned, a light engine, so it can keep up that frame rate and just keep pumping it out dead already. But it's just to give you an idea that this performance of this screen means that everything is just crazy smooth. So here we are at the full 144 frames per second, 144 Hz refresh rate. It is so smooth. Of course, I cannot demonstrate this properly with my camera recording at just 4K 30 frames per second. So you have to take my word for it, but it's the fastest and smoothest I have seen this game ever run. Now, it is an old title. It still does look quite good, though. And then a game like Asphalt 9 here also does support the high refresh rate. Fantastic graphics, and there's no visible lag that I can see. This one is just super smooth as expected with this hardware. So I wanted to briefly touch on this. That is the thermals, the fan. Is it really helping? It does make a bit of a noise. It depends on if you're using it in the high performance mode. It does actually help. Now, thermals I noticed with the fan on doing the stress test would get to around about 60 degrees and then top out. Now, if you turn the fan off, I saw up to 75 degrees from a 15-minute stress test. So it is definitely doing its job there. It's helping boost that performance, and especially when you use that performance enhancing mode through the gaming settings, forcing the GPU to the maximum clock and the CPUs to the maximum clock. That's where it will get very hot. It will still get hot to the touch. I've measured about 43 degrees C from the back of it, well, from the battery stats actually, and that is still very warm. So it's going to boost the performance, but it doesn't mean it's going to be cool after 4 hours of gaming. It will still get very hot. Now to audio performance. So we've got Bluetooth as an option, but there's also the 3.5mm headphone jack that a lot of flagships are just simply missing nowadays. The output quality from it is not the best I have heard, but it's above average. It's not bad. There's good volume to it as well. Now voice calls, I have done a test with that and no complaints. I think that's good. Now the loudspeakers, so we've got the earpiece that acts as a secondary frontwards facing loudspeaker. It seems to have actually more lows and mids, and the bottom speaker has a balance of everything and more treble from that one. But here is a sample of the very loud loudspeakers on this, and I love the way that they actually vibrate inside the case too, just making it a little bit more immersive for gaming. Moving over to our cameras now. So in the standard photo mode, you can see that we don't have an ultra wide option here to select it. So we've got the 3 times, 5 times, and 10 times digital that I wouldn't be using. And if I select right here Pro mode, you can see we've now got the ultra wide camera. It's in the Pro mode, buried and hidden away there. I don't know why that is. And for video, okay, you can see we've got this little hand icon. So that is electronic image stabilization enabled. Tapping it then goes to the tripod mode, and it is not enabled. So you can see it shakes around here, even with my screen capture night mode and portrait. Let's have a look at some samples now shot on the Red Magic 5G. This is a sample of our front-facing camera here. So it does only shoot 1080p maximum, 30 frames per second here, and you notice that it's shaking around a little bit. That's because it doesn't have any electronic image stabilization, which is disappointing because this is a flagship spec phone, very powerful phone, fan cooled. So we can shoot 4K at 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second. Right now this is a sample of 30 to match my video here. The focus seems to be fine, as you can see. We'll focus on the tree in the background and then lock on to the pillar right here without too much of an issue. And I'll just walk ahead now to show you that electronic image stabilization. Vera, it works well. You can hear her meowing away. And this, what you're looking at, is another sample of 8K video, but this time I'm using a tripod, and you can see the sharpness of this video is very good. Even if it is just maybe 6K upscaled to 8, when you downscale to 4K, you gain some sharpness there, creating very good video quality.
Right, so what did you think of the camera performance? I think it can take a decent photo of the main camera. Ultra wide needs a bit of work. Night mode definitely needs some work, and video performance too. We do have the stability on 4K and other lower resolutions, electronic image stabilization, but not with the front-facing camera. Audio bitrate is 96 kilobits per second, a bit on the low side, so it does sound scratchy. These are common complaints with Chinese phones from me, just like no wideband level 1 cert on here, so hopefully that can be added. So they are pushing out patches, because we've got a recent patch that added full 144, I believe, frame rate support for Real Racing 3. It also added a battery percent in the icon in the status bar now, which is great. That was missing, but still no battery battery stats in the settings menu that you can go through and see your usage, what apps, your screen on time that you normally get on Android phones is actually missing, but apparently will be added in an up and coming update from them. So 144Hz gaming, super smooth and fluid for games that do support it. There's not a lot of titles out there that have support for it, but more will be added eventually from developers when they start to recognize this phone. Oh, we need to add support for the Red Magic 5G, and that will then eventually come through. Now, when you game at 144Hz, it burns through that battery, so be prepared. For heat as well, if you're on the highest performance mode, even though the fan's in there that maintains that super good performance, it will get warm to the touch, about 43 degrees. I measured from, well, the internal battery temperature. CPU gets up to about 80. That is normal when you're pushing it so hard for that to happen. But the battery will go in about 4 hours at 144Hz gaming, depending on your brightness setting. Of course, the higher, the more it's going to go through that battery. And at 60Hz, well, you can game for about 6 hours. At 90Hz, which is the sweet spot, it's about 5 there with this. Now, 55-watt fast charging. Unfortunately, we don't have a 55-watt charger in the box, which is a shame. But overall, I think fantastic value for money. 579 euros gets you top spec, great screen, a bright screen, good build quality, really good performance, super fast ROM. What more is there to like for that price point? It's just really, the main weakness is the camera. The cameras on here, they're not going to be flagship level, so be prepared for that. But as you saw from my samples, it's still not too bad, is it? So thank you so much for watching this review of the Red Magic 5G. I hope to see you back in the channel with more up and coming videos. And do subscribe for soon some gaming phone reviews as well. I'm going to have 2 more that are planned for the channel.